Hello and welcome. This is part 3 of the Daubert hearing in the Karen Reed case, in which Dr. Marie Russell is being questioned again as to how she came to her determinations and her overall expert level in this case is being questioned and scrutinized thanks to the prosecution and thanks to Judge Bev, who granted the prosecution's motion for a Daubert hearing. During this segment of the Daubert hearing, the microphones are muted and white noise is played so that the attorneys can communicate with the judge, namely the prosecution and the judge. Judge Bev is about to prevent an exhibit from being projected on the screen. And I just wanted us to watch the reactions to the defense team, especially David Unetti. So if you're hearing that, that is the white noise that is being played in the courtroom to muffle the sound. Now, it's as if attorney Alan Jackson is informing David Unetti of something. Of course, I can't know because I'm not there in the conversation. But just watch David Unetti's reaction. That's like a deflated reaction if I've ever seen one. He's like disappointed, deflated, like not pleased, right? And it's likely because Judge Bev is going to prevent a particular exhibit from being displayed.
So, Dr. Russell, I understand that it was inadvertent, but we're not going to publish that photo. Did not allow it published during the trial. Jurors is one thing, but also the dignity to Mr. O'Keefe. So you can look at the photo.
Which is crazy because, guys, if you've been following court cases long enough, you know that some rather graphic photos appear during trial. They appear during live court. It's what happens. It's what must be done a lot of the time. To know the severity of the crime and to understand how severely someone was victimized, how severely someone was harmed. You know, like countless court cases have to show photographs, disturbing graphic photographs in court. It's not unheard of. To me, this is just the prosecution. Again, just like the prosecution doesn't want Dr. Marie Russell to testify during the second trial, the prosecution and Judge Bev also want to pretend that they're trying to preserve John O'Keefe's dignity when in fact it's likely that the photographs reveal more evidence, and that evidence likely continues to contradict the prosecution's narrative. So much of the evidence has already contradicted and completely disproven the prosecution's narrative already. You know, what's one more piece of evidence? I refuse to accept the narrative that the prosecution and Judge Bev are trying to preserve John O'Keefe's integrity when this entire case, this entire complaint against Karen Read goes against John O'Keefe's dignity, because it is a lie. If they truly had any respect for John O'Keefe, they would want to get down to the truth. They would want to follow the evidence, right? Bullshit that they give a damn about John O'Keefe's integrity. They've already proven it with their behavior during the first trial. Judge Bev and the prosecution, they don't give a damn about the truth.
It's unfortunate that it was put up and published, so you will have it in front of you, okay?
I'll have what?
You'll have it in front of you, just
Okay.
not up on the screen.
Okay.
And we all saw the disappointment in Karen Read's face. It's gonna go to white noise again, so I will skip ahead.
Witness exhibits 3 and 4.
Okay.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Russell, please keep those 2 exhibits down on your lap. Don't even put them up on the top.
I think they're in a good spot. Yes, they're in a good spot. They're not on her lap, but they're not visible to everyone.
That's what I wanted to make sure of. Thank you, Your Honor. Do you recognize exhibits 3 and 4?
Yes.
Are you able to determine whether exhibits 3 and
Like, just to stop here, guys, I'm still so angry at Judge Bev for pretending that she gives a damn about John O'Keefe's dignity. Like, can you imagine any other court case, any other court session where the prosecution and the judge are like, hey, jury, hey, courtroom, this terrible thing happened to this victim, and we would love to prove it to you, but we can't show you the photographs. You just have to take our word for it. You just have to take our word for it that this terrible, terrible thing happened to this victim. Like, it doesn't happen, guys. Like again, court case after court case after court case. The jury members and the members of the courtroom, the people in the courtroom, witnessing the court case unfold in front of them. They are all subjected to traumatizing, horrific photographs. That's what happens in a crime case, especially when the crime is horrific. You know, I'm just saying it happens every single day, all day in the U.S. And Judge Bev wants to pretend that this is about John O'Keefe's dignity. It is infuriating, is what it is.
for our antemortem or postmortem?
The postmortem.
Is there any way for you to determine by the nature of the linens in that photo whether they're antemortem or postmortem?
By the nature of what?
The linens under.
Oh, the linens? Well, not definitively.
Okay. So, are the wounds depicted in exhibits 3 and 4 the same or substantially the same as the exhibit we were publishing?
The same.
approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
I am now on
Jim.
Your Honor, this is Exhibit 3, the autopsy report. Just want to make sure
Okay.
that's
I have it as 4, but that's okay.
the number. That's
Okay,
fine.
so I need that list. Do the list of the exhibits.
Your Honor, what happened was one side wrong.
Sure, come on over. All right, go ahead, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Russell, in coming to your opinion, did you examine an autopsy report?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
And I am approaching with Exhibit 3,
Okay.
the autopsy report of autopsy. Yes, sir. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you recognize Exhibit 3?
Yes.
What is it?
This is a report of autopsy on Mr. John O'Keefe, medical examiner number 2022-1697.
Did you consider that medical examiner's analysis in Exhibit 3 informing your opinion?
Yes.
And how did you consider Exhibit 3 informing your opinion?
Well, there was a description of the abrasions of the forearm and arm.
I'm sorry, which forearm and arm?
I'm sorry, right. Right forearm and arm. Yes.
And what about the autopsy report did you consider in that analysis of that part of the autopsy report?
Dr. Scotabelli's description of the wounds.
And what was Dr. Scotabelli's description of the wounds? And feel free to read from the autopsy report.
Okay. Do you want me to read the descriptions?
Whatever it is you considered with regard to the injuries to the right arm of the deceased.
Well, she described what basically I just described, although she had some measurements.
Your Honor, may we republish the correct photo that we had up on the screen so the doctor can
Yes.
refer to it in, thank you.
Yes.
To the clerk. It's going to be number 5. Your Honor, may I publish Exhibit 5 photo?
Yes, Ms. Gilman's doing it, I believe.
Ms. Gilman, are you all set with what you, thank you. And thank you for putting that back up on the screen. May I proceed, Your Honor? Dr. Russell, in reading from the autopsy report, can you read it and then determine whether there's any relation to what is being discussed in the autopsy report to what is in that photo?
Well, the doctor
Again, another excellent question from attorney Robert Alessi. Excellent question. He's like, now read from the autopsy report and look at the photograph and let us know if the autopsy report and the photograph match up. Really good.
I think she was asking her what she based her opinion on the reference to the medical exam report, not to compare it by reading. It's
so I have an objection to simply reading through it and trying to interpret what the ME thought. Rather
So rephrase your question.
Sure. Thank you. Please read from the autopsy report the relevant portions related to Dr. Scordi-Bello's analysis of the right arm. Again, I object. It's not the ME's opinion. It's whether she relied on the information and how so. I'll repeat. Did you rely?
So that really excellent question isn't going to go through. You see, like the prosecution and Judge Bev don't want to get to the truth. It would be excellent for a forensic pathologist like Dr. Marie Russell, a forensic examiner like Dr. Marie Russell, to look at the photographs of John O'Keefe's body post-mortem and to look at the autopsy report and to tell the court whether the autopsy report is accurate to what the photographs show. Like, it would be so compelling to say, yeah, this medical examiner said this and that about John O'Keefe's body, but she left out this, or she overlooked this, right? Like, for another expert to come in and say, yeah, that's the autopsy report, but it's incomplete because the medical examiner didn't describe everything, and here's everything. Let me tell you what everything is. Dr. Marie Russell could do that, but the prosecution and Judge Bev don't want her to. They want to limit her testimony. Again, the prosecution doesn't even want her to testify at the retrial. That's the whole reason she's here for the Daubert hearing, because of the prosecution. So they want to further limit what she has to say.
Upon what is in the autopsy report to support your opinion as to the nature and source of the wounds in the right arm.
Yes.
What did you rely upon in that report to support your opinion with regard to the nature and source of the wounds?
The description of the wounds at autopsy.
And what was that? What is that description that you relied upon?
It says here, multiple abrasions from 2 to 3 millimeters and up to 7 centimeters.
What page are you on, Doctor?
I'm sorry, page 3.
Okay.
Under the area that says injuries.
Okay.
And then in the subsection it says extremities. It's the second bullet point there.
Okay.
Multiple abrasions from 2 to 3 millimeters and up to 7 centimeters on the posterior right arm and forearm.
Roughly how many autopsy reports have you authored in your career?
Authored?
Yes.
Over 500.
How many autopsy reports that you have not written have you reviewed?
At least 100.
What conclusions do you reach from that description that you just read with regard to whether that is a description or not of a pattern in the report? Exactly.
So you ask it a little bit differently.
Dr. Russell, what do you conclude from reading that section of the autopsy report with regard to the nature of the wounds, the total wounds depicted on what's up on the screen?
Well, it substantiated my observation based on the pictures.
What is the observation first, and then second, how did it substantiate your observation?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question.
Did you, make sure I understood your answer, did you state that that section of the report substantiated your conclusions as to the nature and source of the injuries?
It substantiated my observations.
And
Yes.
okay, what observations did it substantiate?
Well, there are, as the doctor wrote, multiple abrasions, and in certain measure between 2 and 3 millimeters up to 7 centimeters on the posterior right arm and forearm. That's exactly what I see there.
So, is it your judgment that Dr. Scordi-Bello made the same observations of these wounds as you did?
Multiple objections.
Yeah, the objection sustained.
With regard to we've covered what we needed.
And just to specify, we're going to look up the definition, the legal definition of abrasion. Okay, so in the medical field, there are basically 4 types of open wounds. An abrasion occurs when your skin scrapes against a rough or hard surface. An abrasion is like scrapes. It's not cuts, it's not punctures, it's scraping. It's abrasion. A laceration is a deep cut or tearing of your skin by items such as knives, tools, or machinery. If deep, bleeding can be rapid and heavy. A puncture is a small hole caused by a pointy object like a nail, needle, or bullet puncture, when deep punctures can damage internal organs. Avulsion occurs when there is a partial or incomplete tearing away of the skin and the tissue beneath. Avulsions typically occur during violent accidents. So what we see in those photographs are lacerations, we see punctures, and it could even be argued that we see avulsion. But we don't really see abrasions, guys. We don't see scrapes. We see cuts. We see claw marks. We see puncture marks. We see bite marks. So I get that Dr. Marie Russell is saying generally. To me, she's generalizing. Yeah, I agree with the medical examiner's report. She saw abrasions on the upper arm and the forearm, the posterior part of the arm and the forearm. And that's exactly what I see in the photographs. That's what Dr. Marie Russell is saying. But what's not being emphasized is that the word abrasion is incorrect. And we can clearly see that by just looking at the photos. And if you don't remember, you can refer to part two of the Daubert hearing. There are photographs. Those are not abrasions on John O'Keefe's arm. They are lacerations. They are punctures. They are scratches. They're not scrapes. It's not like a rug burn, you know? Like these are cuts. These are punctures.
To cover with regard to that aspect of the autopsy report, was there anything else in the autopsy report that spoke to the nature or source of those wounds?
Not that comes to mind.
So, did the medical examiner, Dr. Scordi-Bello, in that report reach any conclusions about the nature and source of the wounds that are depicted on Exhibit 5?
Not in this report.
So, not in that report. Now we're going to now move on to the next topic. Did you consider DNA evidence in this case?
Yes.
How, if at all, did the DNA, well, what DNA evidence did you consider in this case pertinent to the injuries to the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe?
I considered the reports from the UC, University of California, at Davis lab regarding the DNA evidence.
What training and experience do you have with regard to DNA evidence?
Not very much.
With regard to describe what your DNA experience is.
Well, I'm aware that you have to maintain continuity of evidence, so you have to sample the appropriate area. And then you have to maintain continuity of evidence until that evidence gets to the laboratory for analysis.
How do you...
Excellent. That's an excellent answer, Dr. Marie Russell. Excellent. And as we all know, there was no continuity maintained during this so-called investigation of John O'Keefe's death. We all know about the solo cups and the paper bags and the snowblower, right? They didn't give a damn about the integrity of the evidence. So who knows where DNA came from in this case?
Have experience, training, or knowledge with regard to the topics you just testified to?
Well, several ways. One was that I took a course when I was a police officer in crime scene investigation, and that was stressed, continuity of evidence. Secondly, I was sent to a course as the rape officer, the rape investigator, I should say, in the Malden Police Department. I was sent to a course in Brockton entitled Rape Investigation, and they stressed continuity of evidence that was obtained from victims. And then finally, of course, as a emergency doctor and forensic pathologist, I received additional training.
So despite her training in various classes pertaining to DNA, she admits that she doesn't have much experience with DNA. She's not the one testing the DNA. She's not the one in charge of preserving the DNA. She's just the forensic pathologist.
How, if at all, let me ask you, did you review the UC Davis Veterinary Genetics DNA report in coming to your opinions and conclusions with regard to the wounds on the decedent's right arm?
I did.
And what conclusions did you reach?
The same conclusion.
And what is that?
That those injuries were inflicted by a dog.
Are you aware of the results of the DNA testing of the UC Davis facility?
Yes.
What are you aware of?
I'm aware that DNA was not found.
And?
Excuse me, let me clarify that. I'm aware that dog DNA was not found.
And does that conclusion in your opinion determine whether or not those wounds were caused by a dog?
No.
Why?
Because I don't know anything about how the specimen was sampled. First of all, none of the samplings came from the arm of Mr. O'Keefe itself.
What do you mean by sampling?
They sampled the swabs that were performed and sent to the laboratory. None of them came from the arm of the decedent. Secondly, I don't know.
Insane. You know, the freaking trolls online, man. I swear they're like, well, they never found dog DNA. Like, guys, there was a point that John O'Keefe, like, his pants were removed and he was throwing up because there is throw up, there is vomit on his underwear. How does vomit get on his underwear? Right? Like, what I'm saying is we don't know what the McCabe's and the Alberts and Brian Higgins and whoever else was in 34 Fairview, we do not know what they did to John O'Keefe's body after the fact. We don't know what they did, but we know at one point he was standing while he was bleeding, and another point he must have been standing and throwing up while he was in his boxers, right? But again, the prosecution doesn't explain any of that. And who knows if they like didn't hose off John O'Keefe's clothing, right? Remember, his clothing were kept in damp conditions, like for a long time before they were even checked, before they were even examined. Like whatever evidence was on John O'Keefe's clothing, to me, is unreliable. And again, we don't know what they did to John O'Keefe's body. We don't know if they undressed him. We don't know if they put his clothes back on. You know, they could have hosed him down to remove some of the evidence, you know? Like I'm saying, if there was dog DNA, they probably got rid of it somehow anyway. You know, there is evidence that he was standing up while he was bleeding, and there is evidence that he threw up on his underwear somehow. But none of the McCabe's and none of the Alberts and not Brian Higgins and no one in the MSP can explain to us how any of that was possible when, according to all of them, according to all of those fools, John O'Keefe was struck by an SUV. No explanation of the dog bites, no explanation of the dog claw marks, no explanation of him standing while he's bleeding, no explanation of the vomit on his underwear. You know, and the online trolls want to bring that home, carry that narrative home. No dog DNA. Dr. Marie Russell doesn't know what she's talking about. No dog DNA. And here she is, silencing all of them, whether they want to accept it or not. She is silencing all of the trolls when she says that John O'Keefe's wounds were not even scraped for DNA. Like in what crime case does that happen, people? Like I got immediately angry when she said that. And I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at the MSP. I was angry at Canton PD. And I'm angry at Norfolk County DA. I'm angry at all of them. How do you not test the wounds for DNA? And again, the prosecution and Judge Bev want to pretend that they give a damn about John O'Keefe's dignity.
Anything about how the samples were actually obtained from the evidence and what the state of the evidence was, if they actually sampled the correct area. I don't know if there was any continuity of evidence. And then finally, any test can have a false negative result. So the absence of canine DNA does not mean that the canine DNA did not exist. It just means that they didn't capture it.
Excellent. Excellent. Good job, Marie Russell. Excellent. I will make a part 4. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching.